Welcome to Making Your Miles Count podcast, and this particular podcast is talking about technology and the independent operator industry, where the technology is leading the entire independent operator industry and how it's going to affect you as an independent operator, as a driver. How can you foresee you're going to be doing everything from your taxes to managing your truck, and what's it going to look like, say, 5 or 10 years from now?
Welcome to Making Your Miles Count production, an educational program to all Canadian lease owner-operators with your host, Robert Scaper.
Welcome to Making Your Miles Count podcast. This is part 2 of our technology and accounting for independent operators in Canada. And today we're going to be talking a little bit more about strictly the accounting aspect of an independent operator. Many years ago, before technology, independent operators had a bag that they put all of their paperwork in, and then once a month or once a quarter or once a year, they would hand it in to their accountant, and then they would end up doing it. It's all paper. Very little habits changing from year to year when there was no technology. Nowadays, there is a lot different between different accounting firms and what people are doing and what they're not doing. A lot of people are going paperless. I know our firm, we went paperless 2019. As of January 1st, 2019, everything we have is all digital. But not everybody is. And actually, not all of our clients are paperless as well. We do have approximately somewhere about 25% of our clients who are still old school and they hand in manual paperwork. As an accounting firm, we charge differently for digital as we do as manually drop off. Prior to going digital, there was a great deal of confusion as to how much work that it takes to put something into digital that we receive in paper form. And I made a few assumptions. After about 2 years, 2.5 years, I realized my assumptions were significantly out. It takes about anywhere from 40 minutes to an hour and a half more to process paper than it does to process paperless. That's our experience. I do know some people who they might do a little bit differently, but they have different clients. They have people in construction or other accounting firms have different things. They may have different experiences with paperless or paper. But as an independent operator, probably the one industry that, at least maybe I'm skewed on it, is probably designed the best to be paperless. It suits the industry, the entire industry, much better to be paperless than to be paper. Primarily because, well, a truck driver can be in Newfoundland on one day and Vancouver Island, they're all over the map. To try and get physically to one location at a specific strategic time is going to be more difficult, and it's going to be more costly. And in order to consistently collect and supply paperwork, it can actually be much more easier to go paperless than it is to utilize the standard paper. Now, realistically, it's retraining ourselves. We trained ourselves primarily to operate with paper. Now to retrain it to do paperless, some people are just really attuned to it and they just get into it and say, yeah, okay, all right, let's do this, and what's my new habit and stuff like that. But others are a little bit more, shall we say, they like to not change the way they do things. And though I respect that, sometimes it can be more inconvenient to be paper rather than paperless. We'll go into some of the benefits of paperless in a little bit, but our experience with paperwork, you have to have the right software dealing with it all in order for it to truly benefit the client. And that's why we've created our own software. There's one thing about paperless that I learned when we were doing it through the process, especially in 2019. On average, anywhere from 2 to 5% of all PDFs cannot be read by some readers, I guess. And it's for weird and bizarre reasons. Sometimes, let's say, for instance, an operator uses a particular type of scanner and scans all of the paperwork and sends it all in through email. That particular scanner has a slightly different way of presenting it digitally to others. There's one bank in Canada that if you download their bank statement, it actually can't be read.
Especially if it's printed out, like the computer has a very hard time reading it. Whereas if you download it, it works. But if you take a picture of it, it does not work.
By picture, you mean a digital picture or a physical with your camera picture?
With a camera.
With a camera.
Yeah.
Realistically, what an independent operator needs is they want to be assured that whatever they send, they know that it's actually sent and it's received. Mm-hmm. And we've had some experience with people, sending. What did you see once? Somebody sent a video of all. You put all of their paperwork down on the table and took a video of all of their paperwork. Well, that's actually it's unusable. Would in theory could you not move it to a picture? It's because it's frame by frame by frame.
Sure, if you want to spend 6 hours.
6 hours. 6 hours.
And then
splitting it out.
The other issue is you want to go back and look at that same page. Well, good luck figuring out which part of the video it's in.
Yeah.
You have to watch the whole thing again.
Yeah.
And if it's a 5-minute video of them flipping paperwork over and over, every time you want to go find a specific page again, you have to watch it.
So we've received some unbelievably funny sometimes and sometimes sad paperwork.
Well, initially we kind of kept our system open. So you could send in absolutely anything you wanted to send in. And so people would send in, pictures and PDFs, which was great. But they would also send in videos and HTML files. They would compress their files in all kinds of different compression formats. So it would really receive absolutely everything.
The accounting firm and the independent operator have to both be on the same page. They either have to use the right system or same system. And ultimately what we did, we started in January, like I said, January 1st, 2019. And in January 2023 now, we moved to a different format so that it can be, instead of using email, it actually uploads straight onto our server. And the only real difference is they can still do a difficult or an unreadable page, but you're notified immediately.
Well,
so the operator takes a look at it and says, "Oh, this was rejected."
There's a lot of differences now. The first one is we can control what you can send in, which before with email you could send in whatever you want. We had no way of controlling that, because it's email. You send it, you think it's sent, you think we got it, you think we can open it, but that's not necessarily true. Now with the system, we can limit what types of files can be sent in. So the things that you send in are things we can handle. So that's the first big change. The second big change is the security aspect. Right now, everything is encrypted from end to end, whereas with email, it's not. And so that's another huge advantage.
We had some complaints from some clients, even in 2019, that they are not a big fan of emails, and so they would box it together, encrypt it themselves, and then they would have to send us the open code and all sorts of stuff to do it. And I know when we moved now to encrypted, it basically goes straight in, and there's no problem with security at all. It's like a little pipeline that goes straight.
Yeah, it goes from our app or our website straight to our servers.
Yeah, that's quite helpful. So there is a learning curve. There's an understanding curve between the accounting firm and the independent operator, and learning how their system works. And what we're trying to do is create it as simple as possible. Now, maybe I'll touch a little bit about, from an accounting perspective, what kind of work is actually involved that every bookkeeper or accountant actually has to go through. And this was probably a decade or more ago. I actually sat down and figured out what exactly is the actual work that we do. What kind of activity progresses work and what stops it. Probably, I concluded 80% of all of the effort that a bookkeeper or an accountant actually deals with is actually getting the paperwork to where it is used. So in other words, right now, you as a driver, you have some paperwork with you, you have some documents. The process of moving it from your usage, where you are, to where the accountant or bookkeeper actually has it and is able to do journal entries with it, That's 80% of the work. It's the proper paperwork getting to the bookkeeper. Now, by proper work, should probably said that it's all the paperwork, all the necessary paperwork. We receive some paperwork, for instance, that is totally useless, and we have to discard it because, I mean, all sorts of people. So we have some clients that send us every slip of paper that they have for all of their household and everything, and we're supposed to fish through it all and get the necessary paperwork so that we can do journal entries. That slows down the process considerably, and realistically, that adds to the bookkeeper's work. It's not that we're adverse to work; we don't mind working, but it's useless work. It's work that produces no value. They send us the fertilizer for their grass seed on their house. Why exactly would we need that when you're an independent operator and you're driving truck? And that's just one of Canadian Tire, Walmart, Superstore, all sorts of stuff that shouldn't be sent in. If a person is using non-taxable benefits like we promote in our firm, there is no need whatsoever to do any type of meal receipts while you're out on the road. We were talking about this before, and how should an independent operator handle their business and their personal while they're out on the road? When a person, there's three different ways in which an operator handles meals. One is they keep all of the meal receipts and they use that. Number two is they don't keep any of the meal receipts and they use the TL2. And the third is they use non-taxable benefits. If you're out on the road as an independent operator, you should have one debit or credit card that handles just the truck expense, anything to do with business. And if you are using either the TL2 or non-taxable benefits, you use a personal debit or credit card to handle just your personal, anything to do with meals or anything personal whatsoever. You have two methods of payment on there, and the one should not touch the other. If you do get personal in the corporate, then there's a lot of questions involved. Let's say you get a credit card statement, and on there's 10 Tim Hortons, or there's a Denny's down in Iowa or something like that. And if the person is using non-taxable benefits or the TL2, you don't use that receipt, and it has to be stroked off the statement. It's useless information. Plus, also, it doesn't reflect properly on what's called a shareholder loan. For instance, now you have a credit card statement that has, say, $2,500 in there, but you have $100 worth of personal meals on there. Then how a journal entry is done from an accounting perspective, and let's say now your corporation pays $2,500 for that credit card, 100% of it. $2,400 is legitimate business expense, but the extra $100 is actually a draw from your corporation, and it goes to a shareholder loan. And the longer a shareholder loan is over a year, the more complicated it is to defend to Canada Revenue Agency, because then they'll go back into all of your credit card statements and say, well, how about this Petro-Canada? How about this, or every receipt, and they'll go through anything. Keeping your personal expenses different than your business, very different. If a person is using an accountant that does not use the TL2 or the non-taxable benefits, but they're supposed to keep all of their meal receipts, well, then you can throw it into your credit card statement, and that can be totaled into your income tax at the end of the year. Now, I don't recommend it. You're grossly being overtaxed, but there are people who are keeping meal receipts out there, and that's what they think that they are actually making money on. But unfortunately, they should listen to some other of our podcasts. But realistically, moving paperwork from your point of sale as an independent operator to the bookkeeper is 80% of the work, or the transfer from the bookkeeper to the independent operator, or the bookkeeper to Canada Revenue Agency, or the system to, let's say you wanted an invoice from a warranty perspective on, say, an alternator or something like that. and it's 2:00 in the morning, and you don't want to pay for your new alternator because you just did 2 weeks ago or something like that, and you want to get a warranty issue for that. So then all the effort to try and get that invoice into your presence so that you don't have to pay for it. That is a bookkeeping or an accounting responsibility of transferring information. And that's 80%. I calculate it to be 80% of the work. The rest of it is actually just once you have the information in front of you, just making a journal entry into the accounting is just a number of keystrokes and it's done. It's actually quite fast. So there's a lot of transfer of information. And so when I was thinking about building a database or building a system for independent operators, I realized, okay, proper transfer of information is probably the key of any independent operator. The most important is when I get paperwork, you're thinking, this is how you should think. When I get paperwork, instantly I should be transferring it over to my accountant. And there's various different ways to do that. Like if you're doing it physically, then you put it all together, make sure you don't lose anything, and then you transfer it over. But if you're doing it digitally, you either have a scanner to do it, or you take a picture to it and send a PDF, whatever ways to do it. But doing it immediately at the point of sale is probably one of the most advantageous. Maybe I'm going to jump ahead. I'm going to do a little bit of an advertisement here for our app. Probably one of the biggest thing in the last 10 years. The biggest jump of our firm is actually utilizing an app, building an app. You have an app on your phone, and it does various things. The biggest advantage it has is it can take a picture of whatever paperwork you have right in front of you, and you can go from your phone directly to our server, and it's immediately on there. And then you can actually go around and take a look at exactly what we received. If you look at it and you say, hey, yeah, I can read it, everything's fine, you know that we can read it and it's out. That, like we were saying, is 80% of all of the work right there. So as an independent operator, getting into the habit of moving paperwork from yourself to your bookkeeper is the most important thing. I obviously, as president of the company, I have a card that I go out and I purchase things for the business. On a monthly basis, I have to hand in these receipts for payment and the like. Let's say I go to Staples and buy ink cartridge or whatever it is that I get. Historically, how I've always done things from even a paperless perspective is maybe before that I would have to keep the paper itself, and either I hand it in or I'd accumulate it until a statement came or until it was at the end of the month, and then I hand it all in one lump sum. So paperwork or physical paper is handled one way. But as soon as we had a little bit more aspect in 2019 forward, I would actually take physical pictures of the paperwork itself. Then it would stay on my gallery on my phone. Then at the end of the month, I would go through my gallery for the month and I'd highlight all of my invoices. Now usually, and then I would email it to myself. And it usually would take 2 or 3 emails, but I would then email it all to myself. And then I'd wait for the beep on my phone to say, oh, yeah, I received all of them, that's fine. Then I would be, as soon as I received confirmation that I have the email for everything, then I could go through my gallery and I could delete all of those individual pictures. Then once I sat down at my desk again, and now I have these 3 or 4 emails, and I move all of those individual pictures into the place on where the accounting is actually used for the transactions of whatever month it was. There's a fair bit of steps there involved, and there's a fair bit of opportunity to make mistakes at each juncture there. And I did it. It was much faster than actually keeping the paperwork itself. But now that the app came out, all I do is I go and get my ink cartridge at Staples. I take a picture of it, and I can send it directly to the server immediately at the point of sale, right there when I'm right there. And then once it's successfully transferred, in theory, right now I can just crumple up that physical piece of paper and keep nothing on my person for paper. That, first of all, there was a little bit of learning to it, a little bit of trust involved, because I did have to overcome this 30-year habit of being emotionally dependent on physical paper. But once I realized it's actually on the server, it's all being backed up, I'm not losing anything, I can do anything I want on warranty, can search it up easily, I'm gone, and it's done. Not having physical paperwork accumulating somewhere either in my vehicle or on some other desk or jacket pocket or something like that, it was a phenomenal deal. It took me probably about 2 months to stop actually taking the actual physical paper. But then once I overcame that, now I don't carry paper anywhere at all. And I love it. For having done it for 30 plus years, keeping every single invoice and receipt or something like that. I mean, I'm a person that goes down to the penny. So from that regards, I love the accuracy of things. But realistically, the digital is absolutely where everything is going for the future. Understanding the system that your accountant is working with, that's actually really a critical thing. Sometimes they have one app to do the pictures and another app to do that and another app, and the great advantage we have here is it's all under one system, all under one umbrella. If we go back to the origins of database, some people question why even have a database. Shouldn't you just put everything? All you're doing is just recording invoices and stuff like this. A database is actually something that protects a lot of people, both people on both sides. I'll tell you a story. Number of years ago, this was, oh goodness, it's probably 22 years ago, somewhere in that area. We were doing income tax for people and stuff like that, and we had a new client that came in, and the client was not happy. And asked why they weren't happy. It was both the husband and the wife there, and they said, "Well, we were lied to." And I said, "What do you mean we were lied to? We didn't expect this or we didn't expect that, and we were told something else." And I said, "From who? Like what's the situation? Your employee over here said this." And so I did a little investigation, and I knew the employee very well, and I realized, at least my sense of the situation was that the individual was lying, that the client themselves was lying. Probably the biggest problem in that situation was we had zero proof that the employee had actually notified them of something. No little sticky note, no nothing. And in the end, we solved the problem, and the client left, or I should say solved the problem. We just had as best of a client situation as we could. But I realized, and I think if I remember right, we never charged the client for something or had a big discount or whatever the situation was. I remember thinking, in order to be a successful accounting firm, we can't fully rely on 100% trust, because there are people out there that lie. I don't have a whole lot of experience with growing up anyway with outright flagrant lying, and so it's always been a little bit of a shocker to me to see somebody bold-faced lie. I mean, I've been lied many times to by clients, but if it doesn't really affect me, I shouldn't say it's none of my business, but there's some people who lie, like we did a podcast on lies. And sometimes people lie just to cover up something that they did shamefully. And so I remember there was one client who talked to me, and I knew for a fact that they were lying to me. But if I would confront them about the lie, it would prove nothing other than the fact that he's a liar. I knew he was just covering himself up because he was afraid or ashamed of what he had said. So I never confronted the individual. And I don't think, maybe I'm wrong, some people can confront me on this, but I don't think to correct everybody's lying is everybody's responsibility. I don't know. If they want to lie, let them go ahead and lie. but I'm not going to walk down a path that they tell me I'm supposed to walk down. So building a database, what we really wanted to do is support truth and document things so that, okay, this is actually what happened. So a database records things like phone calls, sometimes the content of the phone call, or an email, or some sort of communication along that lines. And as we accumulate information on a client, you can always go back and you sort of have a storyline that goes along. And so people can't flagrantly lie and get away with it when we have a whole bunch of evidence that shows, oh no, we called here and we called there and this is what happened there. And basically it's a support system. But it's not just a support system that goes one way, that we're just here to defend ourselves and make a client look back. We had an employee a number of years ago, and I said, okay, we're going to build a database so that we can defend ourselves if somebody lies to us, but also it's there to provide the client information about what we have done and have not done. A perfect example of this is GST returns. I used in my example, I says, if we don't file a GST, and we're, 30, 60, 90 days late or something like that, I want the database to show that we didn't file it. We didn't file it until that exact date, and this is the confirmation number on it. And I had an employee at the time who said, wait a minute, are you saying that when we communicate to the client that we have to tell them when we actually filed it? I said, well, yeah, that's the foot. We're being transparent. One way, we're being responsible for what we have done or not done for our client. And she goes, no way, I'm not doing that. Sometimes you have to lie to a client. And I looked at the employee and I says, we are not lying to clients. That breaks trust. You can't do that. Obviously, that person doesn't work at our firm anymore, but their standard of operations when it comes to GST filings was, sometimes you got to lie to a client so that they, it's all Canada Revenue Agency. Their computer failed or they're, did this or something like that. And they blame someone else other than taking responsibility for themselves. And I said, that is not what we're going to do. We cannot do that. We can't, if we're keeping track records to show what has been done and has not been done, we're going to do it for ourselves as well, so that there's a 360 degrees evaluation.
Wouldn't the client be able to just call CRA and ask when it was filed?
Yeah, the only thing is most operators do not call Canada Revenue Agency to find that out. It would be nice if they would. They could figure it out if they use that as an excuse. But I mean, there's 100 different ways to lie, I guess, one way. Realistically, building of a database is there for everyone's protection, so that it has a fingerprint everywhere. So there's 360-degree evaluation. We've had some clients, for instance, who said, look, I've sent you February's bank statement, and I've sent it to you 3 times. We can actually go back and see exactly when they sent and show exactly what they sent. So they've sent us 3 copies of January's bank statement. There's a problem here. We can then say, listen, yes, you've sent us 3 emails, but all of them were January and none of them were February.
So the one interesting thing I found out about that is sometimes that happens where the account manager is requesting February, but the bank statement is from January 3rd to February 2nd.
Oh, yeah.
And so the account manager would assume that January 3rd to February 2nd is February, but the client would assume that's January because it's mainly the month of January.
Yeah.
But it's the ending date.
Sure. And so communication has to be open and honest too. And one of the great things about our system is if the person goes online and he can take a look, okay, well, we got January's. Oh, that's what that means by January. Yeah. And it's automatically sorted into the right month, for instance, and you can see exactly what they have sent and they can see what they have not sent. And then they can fill in the blank. And that's all this discussion, everything is all having to do with that 80% of the effort in a bookkeeper is getting the correct paperwork at the correct way. We've had some really good, I just think of this weird one. There was one client who must have rolled up their paperwork into a ball, put it into their pocket, and then threw their jeans into a washing machine, and we get this ball of paperwork. Half the ink is there and half the ink is not, and we're pulling this all apart. And the thing is, my wife does a lot of the sorting and scanning and stuff like that. She looks through this thing, what can we use? And I said, you know what, take this whole thing, put it over there in the garbage. He's got to start all over again, or it's missing, because it has to be readable. And it has to be understandable what they're doing. If it did go through the washing machine, honestly, you either have to go back to the supplier and get those invoices redone again. But probably the better thing is get the app, take a picture at the till at the point of sale, then you don't have to keep it. Then throw it all away. It doesn't matter. Use a system that is foolproof.
Take a picture before you wash your pants.
Exactly. But I mean, it's amazing what. There's another thing that we're actually working a little bit on. If sometimes people get bank statements and it's like 5 or 6 pages, and it's stapled in one corner, and they're flipping it over, taking a picture, flipping it over, taking a picture. But when you take a picture, sometimes the picture is it's like a little waterfall. It goes, it's not flat. It's not flat. It's on a sort of a hill, or I don't know, how do you describe it or whatever. The staple is causing a bend in the paper. When it comes to sorting paperwork, I guess we're a little bit at the mercy of somebody who does that. But as long as we communicate to our operator, listen, don't have you have to have the paper flat on the table. You can't have it one corner and then because it's difficult to read, and sometimes it's impossible to read if it's too much, if it's overlapped or something. Just take careful 2-second view of it to make sure that it's operating, or that it's fully viewable. But there's a lot of different things when it comes to paperwork. But anyway, that's all paperwork. We're talking about building a database. The foundation of a database should be 360-degree evaluation, where we are being held accountable for what we do and don't do, and the client is held accountable for what they do and don't do. The purpose is that we can reconstruct the history, the fingerprints, the steps in the sand, so to speak, all the way through, and we say, okay, look, if that step is missing, we got to find where it is and fill it in. That's the purpose of a database program. Anyway, so that's pretty much some of the history and where we're going on there. Let's talk now a little bit about the future. Okay, when it comes to the future of the independent operator industry and your paperwork. Say you're a truck driver bumping down the road. Maybe you gather all of your paper together and then you hand it in, or maybe you now are operating with an app and you click pictures of all of your paperwork, you send it in, and the responsibility of converting that paperwork into reports to Canada Revenue Agency in regards to GST returns, as well as T1 and T2 returns. T1 is a personal income tax return, and T2 is a corporate income tax return. So let's say you're a corporation and you're looking to do a year end for that. You got a bank statement or a balance sheet and an income statement, and you now are making choices at the end of the year. You have some income. Maybe you're going to pay corporate taxes, or you're going to do a management fee, and you have the corporation have a zero income, whichever system you decide to utilize at the year end. Realistically, when it comes to an independent operator, it is one of the simplest and most base, humble business models in business. Realistically, you have one asset, you have one employee, and you have one customer, and you only have only half a dozen suppliers in that. It's really one of the simplest businesses to manage. When it comes to taxes, there are only somewhere between 8 and 12 questions at the end of every year that has to be answered. And they're the same questions every year. If you have been, for instance, our client for a number of years, we ask the same questions every year. Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? The questions are the same, just the numbers are different each year, slightly different. So in a situation like that where basically you're doing things year after year after year, the same thing, all of that, or almost all of it, can be automated. Ultimately, the future of accounting for independent operators, at least the way I envision it, and as we've talked and discussed in our meetings, it is possible for an independent operator to manage their own accounting themselves and have the computer basically do the majority of the work, ask the questions, do the journal entries even, and in the end you can manage your entire business independently and on your own. Realistically, what that does is it cuts out a bookkeeper. It cuts out the work of an accountant. Because you have basically the same questions every year, you could, in theory, just answer those same questions every year and not actually have somebody have to walk you through it. Now, in my research, from my understanding of independent operators around, especially in Canada, is so only between 2 and 5% of all independent operators would ever be even interested in doing something like that. I know, Roland, you would probably be interested in that. If I was driving truck, I would love to do that, to just do everything and they don't need an accountant or bookkeeper or anything like that. But you're detail oriented. You like the paperwork.
Yeah, I used to keep track of it in Excel and multiple sheets even, and I could tell you everything you wanted to know about what I did on the road. I really enjoyed it, actually.
Sure. And like I said, 2 to 5% of operators, even either they do their own bookkeeping or their spouse does, and they know everything that's going on. The way software is being developed, at least in our firm, is that as long as the operator fully understands what they're doing, the business model is so simple that there is no reason why the system itself, the software, can do everything, and the operator basically just answers the questions, understands what's going on, and clicks the send button, sends his own GST, sends his own corporate T2s, maybe even a T1, because realistically there's only about a dozen questions. Now, if you have something different, significantly different from one year to the next, like you have a baby or a new dependent or something like that, well, then you may have to add something into there. But if everything is same from one to the next, it is very repetitious work that happens, and there's very few variations in there. Now, certainly, like I said, what do we do if the other 95% who doesn't want it? There's an extreme thing. If 2 to 5% want to do it all themselves, I'm figuring 2 to 5% want absolutely nothing to do with paperwork whatsoever, and you want somebody else to do it completely. Then the software can be integrated with other people. Then people can get involved. But what we're looking to do is to develop an app. An app really is an application or a system, a complete system, so that an independent operator, all they have to do is input the right paperwork, and everything else is all done on time at the end of the year, and they have the results, the most efficient results possible for that. And the more independent the person is, the less cost to them from an accounting perspective it should be. One of the biggest problems going paperless, I noticed between 2019 and probably 2021, is that how much more work the paper clients were than the paperless clients. And what's really not fair is when somebody who is, shouldn't say lazy, but is not attentive to their paperwork, taking up so much more time. There's a difference. We have some phenomenal clients. We have their paperwork done in like almost half an hour, 40 minutes on a month-by-month basis. Now, there's more hours at different seasons that's inputted into, but you can have some that are like a half an hour worth of data entry per month. And yet we have other clients who are basically paying the same rate And it can take an hour and 15, hour and 20 minutes to do the same thing. And realistically, it's because they're either super disorganized, or we have to, they get half the information, then we got to ask it again. And then, there's a huge difference between different operators, what they supply, when they supply. And like we have some clients who hand in paperwork once every 6 or 9 months. We have others who hand in paper religiously about the 16th of every single month for the previous month. We know exactly when they're coming in. We know exactly when stuff comes in. We can track everything. It's very, very phenomenal. When it comes, an accounting firm is organized based on workflow. If everybody delivered everything at the same time every month, we could get things done on a very organized basis. But if somebody comes in and drops down 9 months worth of paperwork, then who gets the priority? Is it the very consistent people, or is it the person who plops down 9 months worth of work? Realistically, it has to be the consistent people that get the priority service. And some people might disagree with that, but in order to, it's no different than if you're operating a truck, and do you want to go from this dock to that dock and get paid $1,000, or do you want to go from this dock to this dock and get paid $800? You want to get the maximum return on your investment, the one who pays the most consistent. You have to give to those who are consistent service. The inconsistent people, unfortunately, have to be considered as an inconsistent service provider, even if they get paid the same, and or they pay the same. And that realistically, I would love to debate anybody who wants to say that's not the right way of dealing with it. I can't see anything other way. You have to give the level of service that you provide. I know I had a good friend of mine who's not very good at his paperwork, drops his paperwork once every 6 months. Well, he's already 3 months behind on his GST for his previous period, and then he'll drop it off on Friday, and then on Tuesday morning he says, "Is it done yet?" And it's like 6 or 9 months worth of 6 months worth of paperwork. I'm sorry, it's going to take a long time to process this, and it certainly ain't going to take 8 hours. If you want consistent service, you're going to have to provide consistent paperwork on a consistent time and format and stuff like it. But that's the industry. And unfortunately, if you're a driver, you take a look around and look at other drivers, and you're going to see that there are different types of people. Some that are very careful of what they're doing, and some that are definitely not careful with what they're doing.
I guess the app is probably going to help with that as well, like to help with organization as well as notifications as well eventually, I guess.
Yeah, very much so. What's going to happen is if the more people use the app, the higher the level of understanding of their business they're going to have. You're going to be up to date. We have sometimes individuals who drop off paperwork 6 months or 3 months late or something, and then by the time we get to the paperwork, we realize, oh, wait a minute, he's missing bank statement from 6 or 9 months ago or something like that. Well, how in the world am I supposed to get that bank statement now? It's 6 or 9 months ago. It's a lot of work for it. If it's done properly the first time, you're going to have no problem with it. But the problem is the habits of the driver to reflect the consistent production of paperwork to the account. That's probably a very significant issue for
and
operators.
the other difference is now you're not going to think about paperwork in terms of months or years.
Yeah.
You should think of your paperwork in terms of when you get it.
Yeah.
That way you're sending stuff in consistently. And so then, instead of the account manager doing the work, once a month, there's going to be paper coming in and they can do the work right away.
Yeah. It's a huge mind shift difference. Even for myself, I was used to, you wait till this and you wait till that. No, it's once you get the app and once you do it immediately, it took me probably about 2 months to fully say, okay, at the point of sale, bam, take the picture, done. When I get the paperwork, bam, immediately send it. And that's a big thing. If a person is consistent like that, they are able to get high level of service, much, much higher level service than they would otherwise. But realistically, long-term wise, people will be able to go online and take a look at their balance sheet or income statement. Well, I got a question about that. How come that expense? So they double click onto that, and then they can go right into all of the individual invoices right on their phone or right at home. They don't have to wait for a year end or something like that, and they can question everything right at right in front of them. And realistically, that's the type of business that we want to serve. Individuals who are really careful and they want to question what's being entered here and what's not being entered. I think it's exciting. Our system is going to be designed in such a way that it's a one-stop shop. You take all of the pictures, you put it all together, and all you do is answer questions at the end of the year. You have total access to every invoice you've ever used for your business. So everything that ever comes through you in a daytime, you just ask the question, is this personal or is this business? If it's business, bam, you take a picture, send it off, done. If it's personal, you handle it personally, however you handle your personal finances. That's way it's 100% transparent, and you're accountable to yourself, and the accountant is also accountable for what they do or don't do as well. In my opinion, it's going to be better than QuickBooks or Sage, primarily because it's going to be much more tailored to the independent operator. Eventually, they're going to be able to see their fuel cost total in terms of cents per mile. We're going to have ways in which you can calculate, okay, what's my gross revenue in miles? What's my fuel cost in miles? What's this? Because independent operators think in miles. So that's why we're developing it. So it's fully integrated. It's not some little app that you slap on to another app or so. It's going to be fully integrated. There's another interesting factor about the independent operator industry. Independent operator industry, I'm glad that name independent is first, because that's how the drivers actually think. They're extremely independent. They own their own truck or they manage their own truck because they want to be in control of their own finances, in control of their own business, building their own wealth. They think independently. That's where the future is. You can't herd them because they're more like cats. They're not like sheep. They're very independent-minded, very independent thinkers, and I admire that. I want everybody to think independently and build wealth in a way that suits them best. And we want the business paperwork and the taxes to be the most efficient system out there and something that an operator understands the most. The ones who do it all themselves can do almost everything independently using the app, or to those who have no desire to touch anything at all other than get the information to us, and all of those in between. Get sort of a mix of both of the extremes in there. And that's really where we're at. Realistically, I think there's a lot of different factors involved in the independent operator industry. One thing that I have noticed quite a bit is there's a lot of turnover in the industry, and I don't mean turnover from one carrier to the next. Independent operators jump into and out of being an independent operator. It ranges somewhere between 5 to as much as 15% of all independent operators who are on the road today. And that's including you now listening. If you're an independent operator, the possibility that you are going to call it quits and hang up the keys, hand in, sell the truck, whatever it is, get out of the industry, is anywhere from 5 to 15% every single year. From an accounting perspective, it's a little bit of a nightmare because an accountant doesn't like all of that change. They just want the consistent guy in there who's been there for 5, 10, 15, 20 years or something like that. A little bit more long-term oriented. Where an industry has a whole lot of people coming in and a whole lot of people leaving, that's difficult for an accounting firm to manage. And that's why the independent operator industry, or one of the reasons why an independent operator industry is, from an accounting perspective, would classify them as low-paying freight, because it's a labor-intensive, low-margin industry, and they really don't want to service that client. They can make a living at it, but that's pretty much it. So it's not a highly focused on industry. But I like the industry, and I've been offered an awful lot to do something else. But I like it. It's a great industry. I like the variations of different operators that come in. I've had hundreds and hundreds of operators in not at the same time. I mean, interviewing a husband and wife in my office, and they're great people for the most part. It's just fabulous people. I like them. I like the independent thinking that they do, and their desire to grow wealth and how to do that is something I want to help them with. But anyway, that's pretty much technology. It's our technology. I'm not exactly sure what other technology is going to transform the trucking industry, but I've always viewed technology as still the wild, wild west. It's not very organized. There's a mountain of stuff to automate yet in the world, probably at least for 10 more years. It's probably going to continue to be one of the most busiest industries, which is programming. It's amazing what can be done. I took technology, I took programming in high school, and we actually programmed in BASIC. Did you do BASIC?
Yeah.
Yeah? But you also took other ones, didn't you?
Yeah, I did a number over the years.
I only took BASIC, so that's, I don't know, stone tablet age. That's it's hardly applicable. Nowadays, programming is much more advanced. Classical education, there's definitely a need for it, but there's some things that you're a little bit behind in. When you graduate, you're learning more. You're actually in school right now.
Yeah.
You're learning more probably here at this office than you are in school or not. What do you think?
That's hard to tell. It's very different from one to the other. But I would say, practically speaking, yes.
Yeah.
There's a lot of theory and a lot of thinking that goes into school and what I do. It is very helpful. Even it transfers well to other areas.
Mm-hmm.
But practically speaking, I mean, I think I learned a lot more this summer than I would have in university as far as that goes.
What I found when I was in school was that I learned a whole bunch of stuff, but I didn't really have any expertise in anything.
Yeah.
Because you dabble with this, you dabble with that. Okay, you understand how C# works, you understand how PHP works, you understand the basics of building an app. But if you actually wanted to use that for anything, you have a whole lot more to learn. You're only at like 5%, which gives you a base, but you still have a long ways to go.
No, same for me. I don't specialize in anything, even though I would say I'm in computer science. I still don't specialize in anything.
There's a mountain of...
there's so much to learn. It's impossible for the school to really get in depth with anything.
By the time they have a syllabus written, it's old...
It's old technology.
Yeah.
Technology. It's important to sometimes learn the old technology, for sure. It's a little bit religious. You mentioned that once we had a discussion. This is a number of years ago, and I said, well, why are we doing it this way rather than that way? And you said, well, now you're getting into religion. And I'm thinking, you're probably right, because there's a lot of some of it is personal preference. I mean, if you write in JavaScript or something like that versus C++, and there's advantages and disadvantages, but is it religious or is it not religious? What are you?
They're all tools, right? So
Yeah.
Best tool for the job, or sometimes they overlap a lot. So
It's a very passionate industry, or it can be. Maybe for you guys it is. I feel underqualified for it, but realistically, is it Tim Cook, who is the CEO of Intuit, and he didn't know he was, and now he is Apple, but he was at one time.
not sure. Yeah, can't remember.
Okay, but there was a guy who was CEO of Intuit, and his greatest line was, he doesn't even know how to spell HTML or IT or something like that. To some degree, when it comes to development, it's more important to understand what you're trying to change than it is to actually how you do it. Like, you guys know how to change something. You know how to develop the software for it. But I got, 30 years or more of accounting, and not just accounting, but working with CRA and working with financing companies, banks, and all the different factors in there in what does everybody want, and how's the best way to organize and re-engineer things so that it works efficiently for everybody. I guess that's, in my opinion, that's what I bring to the table, and you guys say, okay, well, we'll do this first and that first, and then we'll integrate this, and it's a lot of fun. I like being I guess the president of a software development team / company just as much as I do the accounting aspect of it, especially since it integrates so much. If you like what you do, eventually you become really good at it. So technology, as it applies to an independent operator, specifically when it comes to taxes and stuff like this, I mean, there's sure a lot of other technology that's going to be taking over the industry. And some people really gravitate to it, love it a lot, and others maybe not so much, but it is coming and things are changing. If you have any comments, by all means, give me either a call or an email. I probably respond the best to emails. I'm usually 1 to 3 days behind in my communications, but I'm really interested in hearing what you have to say. If you enjoyed this podcast and if you enjoyed other podcasts, please subscribe, like,
Share.
turn on notifications. All those 4 things. Look at that. Have a good trip.
Thanks for stopping by Making Your Miles Count. For further Making Your Miles Count productions, call us at 877-987-9787 or download us at makingyourmilescount.com.